Hello, hello, how are you? I hope you're well. And all of those other sorts of good thoughts. I'm wearing my little unicorn clip today, which is why this is hanging down here. Just because I've got my hair up out of the way. It was bothering me. So let's leave it out of the way. Yeah, it's simple. Right. I hope you're well. I do. And if you're not, then I hope we can provide a little bit of light entertainment for you, even if you're not well. And hopefully you'll start to feel a bit better soon. I don't claim that because of me doing this reading for you, but just because it'd be nice if you can feel better soon. Yeah. Just one of those things. Yeah. Right. A bit weird, isn't it? A bit of a start today. I was going to say kia ora, which means hi, how are you? G'day. It actually means be well, be blessed. But the way we use it in New Zealand is as a casual term of greeting. Kia ora, g'day, how are you? Not the actual question, how are you? Anyway, as you can hear, my voice is kind of nearly back to normal. Still got a little bit of weird stuff going on the bottom end, a little bit graty, but that's okay. We'll get there. What else? Yes, I'm saying again, too many times. I don't know why. It just happens. I do have a jigsaw puzzle ready to go for you, and the command should be ready for it if anyone wants to do it. And if you do the jigsaw puzzle, you'll see the results over here. You'll be doing the jigsaw puzzle in a different browser window, but for anyone else who's watching the stream, you'll see what's going on over there. So if you're on YouTube, hi and welcome. And there are a few little bits and pieces that you miss out on because you're watching this as a recording rather than watching me live or watching the recording over on Twitch, such as the chat box. Now, the chat box is not up on the main screen. It's a pop-in as part of the Twitch system. And it's right across on the far right-hand side of most people's screens. I don't have it actually on my display for the normal display on the overlay because I've got things like jigsaw puzzles and book covers and things like that going on. And anyone who wants to interact with it actually needs to have the proper chat showing, not the one that shows across the top of the overlay, which is why I've turned that off. But if you are on YouTube watching and you wonder why I will appear to read out bits of conversation, it's because people are writing comments about what I'm saying or to each other or thoughts that they've had. They're putting them over in the chat box over on my right-hand side, on the right-hand side of the screen. And, sorry, my nose is suddenly itchy. And then so that you know what's going on, or if anyone's got chat turned off, knows what's going on, I read out their comments and then I give my responses to that as well. So that's what that's about. So if you do wish to join in with us here on Twitch, I'm just looking for the right thing, that's why I'm looking away from the camera. If you do wish to be part of the conversation when I'm live, then this is the link. You can see it on the bottom of the screen here now at the moment. This is the link where I am over on Twitch. And if you join Twitch, you can watch it for free anyway, whether you join or not. You can't interact if you haven't joined and signed in, but it's free to join. So I encourage you to do so. And if you join Twitch and then follow me, which is like subscribing to a channel on YouTube, then Twitch will actually let you know when I'm live when you open the app. And if there's a notification button for it too, which means it will actually when you go online, even if Twitch is not open, it will probably still notify you that I'm live. I'm not sure. It's something like that. I don't do that side of it. I just follow people on Twitch and then my phone tells me when they're live. So if you are if you're on YouTube, how you can be involved. In addition to coming and joining us on Twitch, which I know doesn't work for everybody because some of you are watching the recording because of time zones. Or you're wanting to listen to a whole book at your own pace, not wait for me to do my next live session in 2 days or 3 days, depending on if it's across the weekend or not. So if you're on Twitch and you do want to be part of conversation, there are two options. One is you can leave a comment for me below the video you're currently watching. And yes, I do see the comments. I don't always answer all the comments. I never make that promise, but I do see people's comments there and I do appreciate those. And often I will actually respond to people's comments when they have left a comment for me on a video, especially if it's a comment to do with what the video is about, what we've discussed or anything else like that. But the other opportunity that you have to get involved with conversation about what we're doing is to join my Discord server. Sorry, trying to spell. So I've just put up a link for it on Twitch if you're watching this on Twitch. If you're watching this on YouTube, I do not have a thing that floats up on the screen here for you because it's got a whole bunch of letters and numbers and it's not clickable for you. But if you're on YouTube, if you go to my About section on my YouTube channel, there is a link there for our Discord server, and that link means that it will then take you to my Discord server. It will ask you to sign in to join the server. If you're already a Discord member, you are then joining the server, which is kind of like my forums, my bulletin board, that equivalent, but on Discord. And if you are not yet a Discord user, you will need to sign it up to Discord. It's another service that's free. With all of these, there are aspects of them that you can choose to pay for. Most of us don't. We just use the service, the free service that's offered. And if there is advertising, we put up with the advertising. It's just the way it is. We would like them to believe that enough of us want to use the service that they don't go and start charging for absolutely everything. Anyway, so Discord server is kind of a little bit like a smash up between Facebook and an old-fashioned bulletin board or equivalent. And there are sections within my server where we have bits about the different books that we've been reading. If there are illustrations in the book, I will sometimes put up those illustrations under a channel section that's specific to that book, or a set of books that an author has written maybe. And people can contribute to those. It's not just for me to post things on. You are most welcome to join in the conversation there on any of the different channels there that are open to you. There's a general chatting channel. There's a section there where people can make suggestions about books to read, words that people have been wondering about and they are trying to find a meaning for because the definitions they can find don't make sense. That's one of the things that sometimes happens. Or if there is a book, a word that you can't actually find a definition for, that's a great way to ask. Jonathan sometimes does that. And also, you can make one of the things that currently is happening, very, very slowly, but it's happening, is people can make suggestions for new emotes that I'm creating. Just so that we have more that we can express online through Twitch, and also those emotes, also I transfer them over to our Discord server and they're available for use there as well. So if you have any ideas for emotes to become available, ones that I can create, come and make suggestions there. But don't forget, you can join in with the chat, the general chat channel, just to sort of say hi to everybody, how you're doing and all that sort of stuff. And there's also a place, another section for where you can introduce yourself. It's lovely if you can say what country you're in. It doesn't have to be the country that you're originally from, but the country that you're in, just so that people understand that we are a very broad community. We are from all over the world, which is one of the things that I love about the internet, is you can interact with people from different places. I'm also going to give you another couple of links for those of you who are on Twitch. So I've put up one there that's three of my social media, two of my social media channels and my tips channel. So on social media, I use Twitch, obviously, when I'm watching videos with other people and I chat with people. It's not really a social media, but I do use Twitter, and I also use Instagram. I prefer Twitter because it's conversational. Instagram is great though if you're wanting to let people know something, if you can find a picture to use with it appropriately. So if you're going to want pictures of the cat, Theodore, you'll see that there are pictures of him, often things that I use when I'm saying I'm going to be going live shortly, just because he's rather photogenic. And if you are on Twitch and you want to know more about Theodore, he has his own Instagram account. If you look at my About section on Twitch, there is a link to his Instagram account, and where you'll see any time he has made a post or if he's been tagged in a post, you can see those all on Instagram over there. He's a bit of a character, and yes, he's not the one actually writing it, but his account came about, his Instagram account came about because he pulls the most intriguing of faces and does amusing things. And so we've always put words into his mouth, right since he was a little kitten, about things that would be appropriate for him to have been saying when you see him doing something. And everybody thinks that anyone who knows him actually thinks that they're quite accurate for the way he comes across. He's quite a personality in himself, regardless of the fact that we are projecting our thoughts on him in the Instagram account. You'll see from the photos that yes, he has a lot of personality. He's a rescue cat. My daughter got him a number of years ago now from the SPCA down in Auckland. He was a litter of kittens that were found abandoned on the street. He was kept for a little bit longer because he had a tendency to throw up. And because of that, and because he's very, very cute, especially, he's cute now. Think about, when you see a picture of him, think about how cute he must have been when he was a kitten. Such a incredible ball of fluff and cuteness, all bundled up together. So cute and fluffy, absolutely. So because he stayed at the SPCA for a little bit longer, they don't release animals until they're healthy. Because he stayed there a bit longer, he was often picked up by the office staff and brought out to the front office when they were doing admin and stuff like that, just to keep them company, because they really thought he was quite lovely. And then people realised in the end that he didn't actually have a health issue. It's because everyone was giving him treats and he was eating too much. Like little children, little animals when they're young do not have the same signals that go from their stomach to their brain that say, you've had enough, you should stop eating now. And so they will just eat because it's there and they like it. And if their stomach gets too full, they throw up. And so this is a large part of what was happening with him when he was a little kitten. Anyway, so he doesn't tend to do that these days. He's pretty good most of the time now at knowing how much to eat. Occasionally he'll eat something he shouldn't eat, and so he might throw up. Or because he's very, very fluffy, when he's cleaning himself, which cats do, he will get fur balls, and so he has to throw those up. But he's pretty good about it, and we don't make too much of a fuss about it. He's good. He lets us know. And we don't, it's like if a child throws up because they're ill, you don't punish them for it. It's not their fault. It's the illness that's making that happen. So you do the same with animals as well. And I'm hoping that my voice is loud enough for you. Let me know if you can't hear me properly, just because it's not fully back to normal. That's why I said whatever it was, nearly normal, over on my stream information. Was reference to the fact that my voice is nearly back to normal. But just, letting you know. And for some reason, this is meant to announce over on my channel that I'm live, and it hasn't done. I don't know why. I have to see what's going on with that. Anyway, not a problem. Somebody else's one has said that I've gone live. So it's working, just not quite the way it's meant to. Technology is wonderful, except for when it isn't. Absolutely. If you are new here and you're unsure about this, what I do is I read old children's books. I should introduce myself properly. Hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books, such as this one here and this other one here. These two. So these are books that have been in the family for a long time. Not specifically in my possession. They are not ones that have been picked up from an op shop. They are ones that have been owned by somebody in the family at some stage. So this one here is over 100 years old, and this one here is 125 years old. These are the sort of books I grew up reading. Books that were written for children. Some of them tended to be a little bit more moralistic because, I have ADHD and I get distracted really easily. So if I'm itchy, it's better if I itch it. Otherwise, I will not be able to think clearly. Right, so some of them tend to be a little bit more, let's teach children good ways of behaving, because that's what the Victorians thought. A lot of the publishers for children's books at the time thought that. Other ones wanted a book that was going to be a little bit more fun, such as the books that I have a tendency to read on live. The book that we're currently reading is a particular example of that. It's written by a lady called Angela Brazel, and she is the person who basically originated schoolgirl stories. This particular story is not, it's her book, the book that her first normal book, not a travelogue, not a book written that was based out of articles for magazines or anything else like that, because she had done a little bit of writing before this one. But this is the first of the books that she wrote that was purely for children's entertainment. And she decided that since there were books being written for boys to enjoy, she was going to write books for girls to enjoy. This one it includes a little bit of school references in it, but it's not a boarding school. And it's not just about the main girl character and her friends. This one's about a girl called Peggy and her family, and they live on a farm that was once upon a time an abbey or a monastery, and the farmland was still there, the monastery buildings were in ruins largely, and they are living in the old farmhouse. They don't have any money. Well, very little money. They're making enough to feed themselves, but not really do much more than that. And so it's the various adventures that they have. Later on, she went on. The next book that she wrote was the first of the girls' schoolgirl stories. Sorry, that's the words I was looking for. And it's one which is girls at a girls' school, and the difficulties that they have and the friendship groups that they form, and the antagonism that happens between different groups of people, and the adventures, midnight feasts, getting scared because they thought there was a ghost or whatever else. Typical stuff of that era. Now, a lot of people, when they first come across her books, think, oh, here we go, all that cliche stuff. Well, when she wrote it, it wasn't cliche because nobody had written that sort of stuff before for girls. And in fact, as an author, a lot of her books in general, not a lot of her books in general were actually banned by a lot of schools. I'm just going to put this up here for you. There you go. Oh no, they read an interesting story. They might start thinking for themselves. That was basically the thinking about what was happening in a lot of the schools, because you're not meant to give girls books that they can enjoy reading. You're meant to give them stuff to teach them to be good people. Never mind what boys can do, but girls have to be good people. Behave themselves, be perfect little angels. Oh, how boring. Anyway, so it's one of those things that's just been around for a really, really, really long time, this attitude. And boys will be boys, but girls will be women. That was the decision that people had in their minds. It's like, let's expect something else of them, which is totally inappropriate. People are people. And boys ought to be able to behave themselves and control their impulses, just like girls should be able to. No girl forces a guy to behave in certain manners. It's actually the guy giving in to his own particular thoughts. And girls are no worse at that than boys. So there you go. So the author was quite revolutionary because she decided that she thought that children should be allowed to enjoy themselves reading their books. And she got she was able to continue this as her business for quite some time. It was something that she did, but yeah, I think what the schools didn't realise is when they banned her books, it probably created an even stronger reason for some of the children to want to read the books. And I reckon if it makes someone want to read and they become more fluent at their reading and their understanding of other people and other ways of doing things and all that sort of stuff, purely because they're reading a book, go for it. Yeah, I think there are probably books that shouldn't be given to people of a certain age at certain stages because they are not yet emotionally capable of coping with certain things. That's actually just being realistic. It's like you don't sit down an 8-year-old boy and put on hardcore, inappropriate, enthusiastic hugging movies, if you want to use a very, very, very basic use of euphemism. It amused me the first time I heard it, so that's why I've put it in that manner. We are a granny-friendly, a family-friendly channel here. I don't tend to use coarse language. We don't have that available in our chat and all that sort of thing. But that also applies with books, as I don't think that you need to put in front of someone who is not emotionally or mentally ready for it yet things that are well above their age range. And that I don't think of as censorship. Censorship is where you say, nobody should be allowed to read this because it's inappropriate. And I'm not really into that sort of thing as a wholesale thing. A little bit of limitation, school libraries maybe not having things that are sold for people who are in a different age range, that sort of thing. Yeah, okay, I'm okay with that because they don't yet have the emotional capacity to make appropriate decisions. And once you've seen something, once you've imagined something, that's it. You can't get rid of it. It doesn't go away. Yeah. So there are levels of being aware of what's appropriate that we observe here. But other than that, generally, and I'm going to put this up here, disclaimer. Generally, I don't actually practice any form of specific censorship. I choose what books I'm going to read, and I am reading children's books. So as long as it's in the children's books I'm reading, generally I will read it. I don't pre-read to censor it. There are 1 or 2 words I do not use that may be written in a children's book that I'm reading. The other aspect of what I read to you is that it's all public domain books. They are books that are no longer within copyright, so therefore I am not using somebody else's, I'm not taking away from their livelihood. I'm not stealing from them. I'm not so worried about the publishing houses. It's more about the independent people who are publishing their own books, and also authors who've put a hang of a lot of work into writing their books. And I don't think it's appropriate to steal that from them while they're still alive, while their family are still alive to have inherited the copyright. I don't think that's appropriate. So there are certain books I really, really, really want to read for you guys, but I won't be reading them at this stage because they are still within copyright. And I respect that. I have actually made contact with some estates of authors to find out if I can have their permission to read certain books to you, and I have not received that permission at this point, and that's okay. I'm fine with that because it's disappointing, but I'm fine with that because they are using the proceeds of the sales of the books that this author has written to actually support other authors who are not yet well recognised, to give them a little bit of extra financial help so that they can actually make a livelihood out of what they're doing. And I think that's a marvellous endeavour to do. So therefore, I'm quite happy to support what they're doing with that and not read the books and ignore their copyright. I have actually read copyright books before on here. These days I don't, except the most recent one was one I had specific permission. And because I had specific permission to read it and make it available to you guys, I was happy to read it. I do still have a recording of that. It is not publicly available on YouTube, but it is available as an unlisted video. So that what that means is that if you request the link from me, I am allowed to give you that link. And they said that I can do that. They're happy for me to have it available on YouTube as an unlisted video. That if somebody asks me for that link, I will give them that link so that they can watch that video for that book. And it's not a very long reading, but there's a lot of extra talk in it because it's actually, I was reading a children's picture book about Matariki, and it's a modern myth telling of how Matariki came to be. So Matariki is the New Zealand, actually I'll just turn on that command. Where is it? Matariki. There. Sorry, I just had the command turned off. There's a little bit about Matariki here. Nope. So Matariki is the Māori New Year, and it's also the name of the constellation that signifies the Māori New Year. The Māori New Year is in the middle of winter, in the depths of darkness, which is what the New Year is for people who live in the Northern Hemisphere. And so it has this whole sense of we're in the dark, we are in the dead time of the year. But with Matariki comes the start of the new year, the start of the birthing of life in the ground, in the soil, in the surroundings that we have around us. And so the particular book I had was a gift from Vodafone, our phone provider, our personal business phone provider. They sent out a gift to various account holders, and I was one of them. And we got lots of lovely little bits and pieces, including some New Zealand-made chocolate, some New Zealand-made tea, and both of those are using New Zealand materials, plant materials, as part of them. And also this children's picture book, a little teacup, and a tea ball for using the tea leaves, and all sorts of things like this, all as this lovely surprise at Matariki. And also this year was our first year that we have ever actually observed Matariki as a public holiday in New Zealand. Technically, it's not a celebration, it's an observance. It's a little bit like Anzac Day. Anzac Day is not a celebration because Anzac Day is an observance day for those who have died in various conflicts who are New Zealand, a part of New Zealand. So it started off with the First World War, and the Anzacs was the Australian New Zealand Army Corps, and they were landed on the beaches in Turkey to fight to take that land so that the Germans would not be able to use that as a supply route, and all sorts of stuff like that, and also the Russians, so that they had no access through Turkey. They lost the battle. They lost a lot of people, the New Zealanders and the Australians. The Allies lost those fights, but there were so many young men from New Zealand and Australia that died there on the beaches around Gallipoli, not just on the beach at Gallipoli. Anzac Cove is the name of one of the beaches there. Now it has been renamed that by the Turkish people, and they honour us. How often does that happen, where you go to war against a nation, you invade them for whatever reason, a lot of your people die, and then they honour you every year? That is just mind-blowing. Anyway, so Anzac Day for us is the day that we remember initially those people who died there, and then from that other people who have been lost in war, in conflict, wherever around the world. So we use that as our Memorial Day in New Zealand and also in Australia. We don't tend to observe the standard International Memorial Day. We tend to do most of our thing like that on Anzac Day. That is one of the things that we do. I have actually seen the Te Papa display for Gallipoli. It's amazing. It's mind-blowing. Actually, no, sorry, I was remembering something else I'd seen. My husband and my son have seen it. It was mind-blowing. In fact, my son, who is highly sensitive, he's on the autism spectrum, and very, very sensitive to all sorts of inputs, physical ones, but also emotional ones. He was so moved by it that he couldn't actually go through the whole thing. And this is as an adult. It's just one of those things. Yeah, JJ's saying, I cried when I went through it. It was horrific and beautifully done, but sad. Yeah, beautifully done, the manner in which the exhibition has been done, but it's also very sad. The one I have been to, and it's probably looking a little bit tatty now, is that there is a museum at the Army training base in the middle of the North Island at Waiouru, and the Army base there has the Waiouru Army Museum. And I've been in through that display there, and it's nowhere near as interactive as the one at Te Papa. Te Papa is our national museum in Wellington, for those who don't know. It's nowhere near, because it's the one at Te Papa is much more modern display. But the one at the Army Museum in Waiouru is the one that really moved me, because they used mannequins in a way that hadn't been done before at anything I'd gone to, except for our local our local Kauri museum. So they were mannequins that were displayed in a way that were really depicting people in the middle of doing something. So you had sweat running down their faces. They had looks of terror or intense concentration or surprise or anger or whatever on their faces, really convincingly done. And then they had around them the different equipment that they use in those particular situations, and it was very, very moving. This is without it even being tied to anything specific like the Gallipoli exhibit. Anyway, so the reason why I mentioned Anzac Day and all of those other aspects of it is because that is specifically a day that we observe in New Zealand. It is not a celebration, but it is a day of observance. And so Matariki is also not listed as a celebration, it's a day of observance. It's a day that we observe Matariki. It's a day that we take time to think about what Matariki represents. It represents the past. We think about the people who've passed before us, the people who we've lost in the last year. We think about what happens with the ground, with getting ready to start providing food for us again in the fresh year of spring. That we come into with spring. And we think about the things that we have coming ahead of us. We plan, we daydream, we anticipate possibilities. We think about what we may possibly step into, the things that we can look at, trying out new things. So it's a great way of just rounding up the old year and then looking positively forward into the new year. And so this year was our first time we've ever done anything like that in New Zealand as a nation. And it was a public holiday, as in it was a day that we did not go to work. Things were closed. It was important to us. So that's what Matariki was. And I'm just trying to think of why I was telling you about Matariki. So yeah, kia ora is a Maori greeting, meaning hello. It actually means, and I did pull it up before, sorry about this, I'll just see if I can pull it up again. There's so many places that actually specifically say it. I'm trying to get it. That's not the one I meant. It says here that it's used as hi, greetings, hello. It's often very informal when people say kia ora. It's like saying g'day. How are you? As a greeting, how are you? Not how are you today? Please give me the answer to how well you are. It actually means... I'm finding all the wrong places. I did look at it before. It actually means stuff about being well. And no, I'm not going to use Google Translate because Google Translate doesn't have the brain for it. Japanese is a language that does not translate through Google Translate. You can do individual words and it will give you a meaning, but Japanese, when you put those words together, you can have an overall meaning that is not the sum of the parts. It actually has a whole other aspect to it. And Māori works like that too. Because it is first and foremost a spoken language, it's how the words relate to each other in a sentence and how they relate to the context of where you are and what you are doing. It's a living language and it is a spoken language. And so how all those things happen is, it's just, in some ways, it's kind of almost mind-blowing just how dynamic it is. And I love it. I don't actually speak Māori. It's one of those sad things. I don't have those skills. I don't have that background to my education. And yes, I could go and technically go and learn Māori as a language, but I feel that I would not be able to do it justice because my memory is so poor. As you often see here, I find it very, very hard to pick a specific word that I'm trying to say because my ADHD, which means that my brain pings all over the place and is distracted very, very easily from things, combined with my autism, which means that my brain can, even if it's easily distracted, if it's decided to take hold of a particular piece of information or something of interest, it's very hard to make it let go of that, which means that other information doesn't always arrive in time, such as the words. There you go. Oh, come on. It's to do with wellness and all that sort of stuff. It means a lot more than just hello. A wishing of good health. There you go. Literally means have life or be healthy. Kia ora. Have life. Be healthy. Isn't that cool as a greeting? Instead of just saying hello, which is just like acknowledging that the other person's there, have life. Be healthy. And have that being the thing that you approach people with. I think that's really cool. Anyway, so I was saying hello to people who are new here. I read old children's books, which I've already explained to you. Today is a really bad day for distractions, isn't it? I'm sorry. We'll kind of get there. And I'm going to get reading very soon because I don't want to miss where we're going with the story. And I don't want to stop this story today's chapter halfway through. I did scan it mentally. I did visually. I scanned it. I didn't read in detail, but it's sad. It does have a very sad bit in the first half of the chapter, but then it picks up, okay? And it's one of the things we have to learn to cope with is in children's stories, they're not all sparkles and unicorns. There is tension in the story to create a story that children and adults invest themselves in, that they want to be part of, to be carried along with. There will be tension. So sometimes there will be sad things that happen. And there is in today's story. So just to conclude the bits of information for those of you who are new here, who haven't been around when I've been reading before, I usually give 3 tips, and I will today. 3 tips for making the most of being here and listening to the stories. Number 1 is drinks, number 2 is snacks, and number 3 is the best house in the seat in the house that you can find. So drinks, I always have water because water keeps your brain and your body working. It also is helping me with not having quite as much phlegm from this cough and cold that I've had. And no, it hasn't been very noisy. It hasn't been COVID, it's just been a cold. I haven't had one properly for a couple of years. Just because of all the masking, it's been very effective. I haven't had a cold for a couple of years. I also happen to have another version of my favourite drink here today in my Element of Surprise mug, travel mug. I have a long black. And the version of a long black that I have is not actually espresso based, which a true long black is. This one is a stovetop long black. So this one is made using what is called a mocha pot, M-O-K-A, not like a mocha coffee, which is M-O-C-C-A, C-H-A. M-O-C-H-A is a mocha coffee drink, which is made coffee and chocolate. No, a mocha pot is an Italian invention, which is the one where you have the pot at the bottom with water, a little basket in the middle that you put the coffee grounds in, and then you have another half pot that gets screwed on the top. The heat at the bottom boils the water, pushes it up as hot water or steam, I think it's hot water, up and through the coffee, and then it bubbles out through the top of that because the pressure that's building up in the bottom into the top pot. That's a mocha pot. A stovetop coffee pot is sometimes what they're called. So we have several different means of making coffee in our house in case the power's off or we've run out of milk. So today's episode is courtesy of running out of milk. I like having my flat white, which is a double shot espresso with steamed milk. But if I don't have milk, then I'll have a long black made on the stove if I have the right sort of coffee to make it with. Because the coffee you use for making espresso is not the same as the coffee you use for making stovetop coffee. They work completely differently. Wonderful on the jigsaw puzzle, horses grazing at Abbey-Dore or Abbey-Dore in England. Now this particular location is, I think, south of where they are in the story that we've been reading. It's a similar sort of hills on the English side of the farm. On the Welsh side of the farm, the hills get much, much steeper than what you see here. But you've got the church tower in the background, you've got the farmhouse in the front, and then you've got horses in the paddock in front. So I am going to set up the next jigsaw puzzle so it can be done while I'm reading, because it specifically relates to, I said it again, I'm sorry. It specifically relates to the first half of this. No, I'll try that again. It is kind of connected to the first part of the story that I am, of the chapter that I'm reading today. I'm just going to get this set up so it works well for you. 135 pieces. I don't want to make it overcomplicated, but something that's a little bit of entertainment for the eyes and the hands while I'm reading. So as I said, just remember the first half of today's story, first half of the chapter is sad. But there is a little bit of hope as we get towards the end of the story, even though the characters don't know. Just so you're aware of it. So there you go. That is ready to go if you want to do the jigsaw puzzle. So we've had drinks. Tip 1 is drinks. Tip 2 is snacks. And what do I have here? That's a good question. I've got my little crackers that I haven't eaten for a while. I haven't eaten any of them for a while, I mean. So they're just little simple water crackers. I often have them with cheese. I'm not having them with cheese at the moment because when you get a lot of phlegm build up, it's good to reduce your cheese intake so you don't aggravate it. So there you go. There's another jigsaw puzzle for those of you who want to do it. And yes, it is a different picture. It kind of fits in with the theme that this month generally has for most people. Speaking of this month, towards the end of the month, I will be reading some old folk tales. They are not specifically Halloween tales, but because they are old folk tales and they are English, and also some of the tales I will be reading are actually Maori. They're written in English, but they have been transcribed by people who spoke English and Maori. They will have a different feel to most modern tales. So they kind of will fit in a little bit with the fact that October is a little bit of an odd month, just got that weird feel to it. Additionally, for new bits and pieces I've been doing on the stream, I have a new redemption set up there for those who want to use channel points. You do not have to, but if you wish to, those points are available to be used, and you can explore the possibilities without actually redeeming it. If you click on the button that's at the bottom of the chat on the left-hand side that looks like a book that's fanning its pages, my channel points are called pages, and that's what you use to redeem. So we've had tip 1, drinks, tip 2, snacks, and tip 3 is the best seat in the house. So to enjoy listening to a story, it's a good idea to have somewhere comfortable to sit. I've got this as a lovely reminder. It's a nice overstuffed cushion. Overstuffed as in it's not super soft, it's quite firm and well supporting. Anyway, so find yourself somewhere comfortable so I can read and you're not having to wish that you had got a different seat to sit in. But the other side of that is if you have to work, if you are studying and I'm keeping you company, please don't get so comfortable that you fall asleep. Please carry on with what you need to get done while I read for you. So how about we get on with reading? I've done enough chatting and I think it's time to read. I just have to unlock my iPad. So just for those of you who don't know, I read off a first generation iPad mini. It's this big. As I say, it's the first generation. That means it doesn't get updates. But what is really good is it has built into it its operating system. It has Safari browser, and it also has Apple book reader. I don't know what they call it, if it's Apple or whatever, iOS book reader, and those are built into it, so they don't need to actually be updated to still work. And so I can download the books that I read for you. So sometimes I will read a book from a physical book where it has paper pages that get turned over. Other times I am reading from this iPad mini. I love being able to keep old technology out of the rubbish. If it can still be used, then use it. So just as a wee tip for those who are unfamiliar with it, some of my redeems are things that include hairbands, and whether or not the redemption is a random one or whether it is one where you get to make the choice. So that's really up to you as to how many points you want to spend. But I shall get on with reading, and if any of those things come up, I will see it. It will be on the screen in front of me, and then you'll see what happens if you weren't here when I've done it previously. I'll just take a mouthful of water and we'll get on with reading. Right, so chapter 21 of A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazel. Chapter 21, Rollo's Grave. Yes, it's as sad as what that sounds. Under the wide and starry sky, dig the grave and let him lie. Glad did he live and gladly die, and he laid him down with a will. I'm guessing that's a poem about someone who's died in a war somewhere. It just has that feel, doesn't it? Each of the chapters in this book starts with a verse from a poem somewhere. Rollo, now grown into a fine dog of a year old, remained Peggy's favourite among all her numerous pets. Though she had not again tried him for a bedfellow, she'd tried to get him to go to bed with her, and it was a disaster. He wanted to play. He was still the companion of her walks and the most winsome playmate on wet days, and Peggy firmly believed that he understood every word she said to him. He was growing clever with the sheep too, and father hoped to be able to train him into a really valuable collie. Collie dogs are used as sheep herding dogs. There are several different versions of collie dog. The one I'm used to is a border collie. Most commonly they are black and white, but there are also ones that are sort of a beigey brown colour and white. But then you have other collie dogs such as rough collies. They're the ones that have a very skinny nose and a lot longer hair, and they're kind of blonde looking. But they are also in that dog family where they are happy to bunch animals together, and that's called herding. And so that's one of the uses that these sort of dogs are trained for working with animals. And I'm sorry about the volume of my voice. Let me know if I need to turn it up a little bit. Okay? So, he was growing clever with the sheep too, and father hoped to be able to train him into a really valuable collie, even hinting that he might in time gain a prize at the annual sheepdog contests, which were held for the district of Gorswyn and the Welsh border. So Gorswyn's their village, but it's also their district. I wasn't aware of that. And the Welsh border because they live right on the border with Wales. And the Welsh also do a lot of sheep farming. Peggy liked to see Rollo working with the sheep, the tips of his ears twitching and his faithful brown eyes bright with intelligence as he cleverly sorted the lambs which father had pointed out from the rest of the flock and drove them neatly into the enclosure, coming up whimpering with pride for the praise which he knew awaited his efforts. Yes, they are very relational dogs. You don't reward them by giving them a treat. You reward them by saying well done, or giving them a pat, or smiling at them. They're incredibly relational. One lovely April morning, Peggy started off alone on the ostensible errand of going to pay £50, which was owing to old Williams, the mole catcher, but the more real errand of gathering primroses and hunting about for birds' nests. It was seldom that she was separated from Bobby, who was as constant as her shadow, that's her younger brother. But today he had preferred to stay and work in his garden, having many designs for its improvement, while the holidays were waning only too fast. Peggy had whistled for Rollo, but he was not to be found, and it was only when she was more than halfway down the pasture that he came racing after her as hard as he could tear, nearly knocking her down in the exuberance of his joy. And yes, this is going to be sad, okay? And if you don't want sad, keep in mind the chapter name, Rollo's Grave, okay? If you don't want that, I'm okay with you not listening to today's story. The second half of it will be cheerier. And if you can't listen to the first half of it, if you want to bow out from that, but you are on Twitter and you want me to let you know when we get to the second part of it, tell me now in chat and I will tweet when we're past the really sad part, okay? So that you can come back and listen to the rest of it. I don't want you to miss the good part of the chapter. Anyway, so I'll just give you a moment or two so that if you do need to go, which I totally understand, you can do so. I just don't want anybody to feel cornered by what's going to happen. I'm just noting some information I need here, sorry. I'll just do this, giving you a moment or two to go and, if you need to, depart. But also, I'll just give you my social link again so that if necessary, you can... sorry, I'm just thinking what the command is. I'm giving you my social link again so that you can find me on Twitter. Those of you who are on Twitter, if you need to go because of what's coming up, that's fine. But if you let me know that you are going to be on Twitter, I'll tell you when we get to that part of it. You don't actually have to be using Twitter. You just have to find my account and keep watching it because it will turn up there what I say when I get past this point if you need me to do that. But I need to know that you need me to do that, okay? It's going to be sad. Warning. Instead of walking along the high road, Peggy determined to take the path through the fields, which skirted the preserves belonging to Lord Hazelford's estate. Preserves are wooded land, that's where there's trees growing, where the land is appropriate for birds that are hunted to be able to live. And so they are land that is preserved, as in you don't go in there, you don't go shooting in there unless you're the Lord or with his permission, but also it's not farmed or used in any other way, so the birds aren't disturbed, so their numbers increase. That's what they mean by a preserve. Okay, just weird usage of language from this era. So that's why I'm explaining it. So they took the path through the fields which skirted the preserves belonging to Lord Hazelford's estate, for the finest primroses grew at the edge of the wood, and the earliest bluebells, and many a snug little nest might be found hidden away in those quiet hedgerows. It was a glorious morning, with the larks singing overhead and the thrushes trilling in the bushes, and that delicious smell of the earth which we often notice in early spring. Isn't it good? Have you noticed that yourself? That there's a particular smell in the air in early spring, after you've had cold and damp and all this sort of stuff going on. There's a particular smell. So yeah, I'm going to carry on. And it makes the blood run through our veins like rising sap. It's the fresh new life coming. The trees were clothed with the pale green, tender green of April, all the new leaf buds, and a cuckoo, the first of the year, flew out of the copse, and cuckooing loudly sped over to where the larch trees were bursting out into a crowd of tassels. So larch trees have these tassely bits that hang off them, which are kind of, I think, like a tree flower for growth of whatever their seed format is. Excuse me. And the copse is a cluster of trees which is, by the owner of the land, farmed for the trees, but they regrow. They coppice them, and the wood is sometimes used for making fences, and it's also used for making charcoal, all sorts of things worth looking up. Copse, C-O-P-S-E. Sorry, I'm just going to give you that as a word here. Which should come up here. A thicket of small trees or shrubs. Yes, it's actually a one that grows in that particular manner because they have tended to it so that it will grow in that manner. Most copses these days, though, are quite overgrown because nobody, yes, copse, to trim or cut. Coppicing is from that, which is where you cut these new they'll often be timbers that are about this big, but they're branches that grow up from the stump at ground level. And then they're used. Sorry, I need a mouthful of this coffee. Or two. So where the larch trees were bursting out into a crowd of tassels, the cuckoo was flying across to the larch trees. Peggy had no pocket in her dress, but she turned the half-crown in her hand for good luck and hoped it might answer the same purpose. Apparently having a half-crown in your pocket brought you good luck. So it's not her money for her to spend on something. She's going to pay the man who has been dealing with the moles, which just dig through everything to eat the worms, which means that the grass and the vegetable gardens don't grow as well because there's not as many worms. And also, if you want a nice green lawn that's smooth, you get mole hills in it and holes, and so people will get rid of the moles. Moles are okay in the paddocks, better in the paddock than in the lawn or in the veggie garden. Anyway, so she had this coin to pay the man, and it's not for her spending. It's not hers. Keep that in mind. Hoped that having it in her hand, turning it over, might answer the same purpose. Rollo was almost as happy as his mistress. He poked his nose into all the rabbit burrows, he chased the birds and dug holes for rats, and generally behaved as if he were a puppy again, instead of a sedate, grown-up dog, snapping at the flies and standing over Peggy, wagging his tail in approval while she gathered violets and wood anemones. These are all flowers that grow on the edge of the woods, which is wonderful when you see them in real life. If you are not used to them where you live, it really is quite a lovely thing to see. Right. The path which Peggy was following ran along a lane with the wood on one side and a tall hedge on the other, so it's not in the field itself. It was a lonely spot, for there was not even a farmhouse in sight, and as it was the only by road, no, sorry, and as it was only a by road, I don't know why I put the in there, as it was only a by road is a back road, a road that is not commonly used, a lane, but not a lane that has houses on it usually. Hang on. I really need to get a setup where I can type two-handed very easily, but the keyboard is right in front of me. There's just not enough room at the moment. And we don't have by road. Oh well, you'll have to put up with my explanation of what it is instead. As it was only a by road, there was not even a farmhouse in sight. Good to see you. Great to have you here past shelf date. Just a warning, this is going to get sad, and it's going to get very sad very soon. If you can't cope with it, keep in mind that the chapter is called Rollo's Grave. Okay, that is significant. The second half of the chapter is okay. But if you can't cope with that, then take yourself off for a few minutes and then keep an eye on my Twitter account so that you can see when I've got past that part of the story, okay? Now, if you are not a Twitter user, if you follow this link, you will still see when I put up a new message there. I will try to remember to do so when we get past this really sad bit. I'm sorry, it's quite sad. So if you can't cope with that, please don't sit here and listen when I'm reading that particular part. I really don't want anyone to feel like it's just too much and they can't be around when I'm reading anymore. So I'm just warning you for this, but it's not the whole chapter, okay? So just give you a few moments, and I'll just check this again, just because I'm being good. Oh yeah, and if you're not aware of it, I am part of a group of people who also, like me, read public domain books. And we are called Codex, and we have a Twitch team. There's 2 links in that I've just posted there. The Twitch team link, which will show you who's live, which currently it's going to show you me. I don't think anyone else is usually live at this time of day. But also the Discord server for Codex. And one of the really cool things about our Discord server, and this is not my one, this is the Codex Discord server, is even if you're not a streamer and you're not wanting to find out more about people reading public domain books or the book club, which we do once a month, which you can be part of, even if you don't want to do that, but you do want to find out more about streaming security, about whether or not there are bots in your channel, what you can do to prevent them being in your channel, how you can keep your community safe so that there are not bots stealing people's information from being in your chat when you're live, and also how to tell what is a bot even, but also why bots are a problem, not the good ones that are authorized. There are a number of those, but the number is very small. There are lots of really bad bots that steal information, but they also take people's stuff because, no, that's okay, I'll put the Codex information up again if you want it, or explain it. I'm just now talking about the security channel on the Codex Discord server. It's brilliant for people who stream themselves or people who want to know what good streamers will do to look after their community. And you don't have to be wanting to find out about the book club that Codex runs once a month. You don't have to be finding out about what various people are doing, but it is a great way to do that if you want. If you just want the security information, join the Codex Discord server so that you can actually see what goes on. Because Goriki, who's one of my moderators, he is an excellent bot smasher, and he wants people to know how they can do that themselves, or if they are moderators for other people, what they can do about it. He gives some good links that you can use, but he also tells you behavioral things of bots, the way they are written, that's to help you to recognise the behaviours of a bot that's not necessarily already recognised by some of the links that people share, which I have in the past. Links that people share which have lists of bots on them. He will often recognise a bot a month or two before it's actually officially recognised as being a bot. So he's saving people who he moderates for from being botted, follow botted or spam botted or anything else 2 months before other people know that, to be able to ban them. So there you go. It's worth it. It's really worth it. Now, I've given you all that so that if you needed time to leave my stream while I read this really sad bit, you can leave it now. I am about to read the really sad bit. Then I will tweet when I've got past it. And that's why I've given a link to my Twitter account. Even if you don't use Twitter, you can still see what I tweet because they are not private. And I will say when I've got that past that bit, and you can come back and listen to the rest of the chapter. Okay? So I've given you enough time to leave. And if you're still here, I'm assuming you're going to cope with this. Just get your tissues handy. It's a little bit sad. In fact, it's quite sad. Just, forewarned, okay? Forewarned is forearmed. Right, so there was not even a farmhouse in sight alongside this lane, and it was only a by road, it was very seldom frequented, even by the country people. So people would walk it, but not very often. You're not going to meet a lot of other people walking down this lane. As she swung the gate open and passed from the field into the lane, she saw a sight which for a moment made her hang back doubtfully. For a tramp lay stretched out, full length, asleep in the sunshine, his tattered clothes and broken boots, a strange contrast to the bed of white daisies and celandine upon which he lay. Peggy was not generally afraid of poor people, but even in sleep this man had an evil, hangdog look about his face, which might have warned many an older person to give him a wide berth. So at least she's aware, she just hasn't learnt to act on it yet. This is something I have tried to train my children up. When you feel a little bit about a person or a situation, listen to it. Save yourself a lot of pain and heartache and trouble. Listen to those prompts that your body is giving you. Your body is incredible at telling you stuff if you learn to listen to it. And I hope past shelf date that you've been able to resolve that emergency. I shall carry on with reading. Okay, so it's a tramp and he's looking rather nasty and he's lying there snoozing amongst the daisies and the celandines. He had an evil hangdog look about his face which might have warned many an older person to give him a wide berth. She stood for a little while with the gate in her hand, hesitating whether to go forward or not. Then, thinking she could probably pass him quietly without waking him, she walked on, treading on tiptoe. But he could not have been so fast asleep as she supposed, for he sprang up as she neared him, and casting a swift glance round to see whether she were accompanied or alone, held out his hand and begged for money. "I have none to give you," said Peggy, trying to pass him by, but he stood over the path before her with a blustering air. "No money? What's that in your hand?" he said roughly. Peggy put her hand under her dress, like sort of hiding it in the folds, and tried to beat a retreat to the gate. "Now then," cried the man with a horrible oath. Bad language. "None of your slinking off. You give me what you have there, or I'll break every bone in your body and worse. Here, hand it over, quick." He came a step nearer, but at that moment there was a rush and a rustle, and Rollo bounded like an arrow through the gate and flew at his throat. The two rolled over together, and Peggy clung trembling to the gatepost as she watched the confused heap at her feet. Rollo scratching, snarling and biting like a wild beast, and the tramp kicking, fighting and swearing in a way which made her blood go cold. To hear, she was too terrified to run away, and could only stand there, a breathless witness to the scuffle. Now the dog had the mastery, and now the man, as each panted and fought for his life. But at length something bright gleamed in the sunlight. There was a cry of agony, and Rollo lay in a pool of blood upon the grass. The tramp raised himself slowly up and looked at Peggy. Peggy shrieked such a shriek of ghastly terror that it might have been heard a mile away, and mercifully it was heard, for there was an answering call from the wood, followed by a rustle of branches and dead leaves, and the keeper and his son burst through the thick undergrowth and came scrambling over the fence. Almost before the echo of her cry had died away, the tramp took to his heels and was off down the lane with sturdy Harry Adams racing after him in less time than it takes to tell it. "After him, Hal!" yelled his father, because Hal is one of the short forms, one of the nicknames for Harry. "Don't let the villain escape. Send a shot through his leg if he's gaining on you," because these are the gamekeepers. "Has the brute hurt you, Miss Vaughan?" He looked at Peggy tenderly to see that there was no damage done, checked over her. Peggy shook her head, for speech seemed almost impossible at that moment, and she broke away from the keeper's eager inquiries to kneel down by Rollo's side, trying vainly to staunch the crimson stream that was draining his life away. But Rollo was beyond reach of help now. The poor beast made a feeble effort to raise himself up to greet his loved little mistress. He whined and licked her hand, and with one last affectionate glance from his rapidly glazing eyes, rolled over on his side, quite dead. And that's the end of the section. They don't tell us anymore right there what happened. We don't need to know. "He was a faithful friend, Peggy, for he laid down his life for you," said father later on in the day, when poor Rollo's body had been carried home to the stable, and the tramp, safely lodged by Mr. Adams and Harry in Warford jail, to await his trial for attempted highway robbery and assault. I'm glad they got him. And I'm just going to put up for you a word that used to always puzzle me. That word there is jail. It is not goal. Okay? So as a kid, learning certain words from reading them, a G like that was G. So it was goal, but it's not. It's jail. We now spell it Jail, but that is actually how it used to be spelled. Jail. Gaol. Did you know that? Just for a little bit of light distraction there, sorry. I'm just going to get past the most intense of this, and then I shall inform our listeners over on Twitter that they can come back. "He was a faithful friend, Peggy, for he laid down his life for you." Owl with a G sound in front. Yeah. Gal. Yeah. It's jail. That just blew me away, actually discovering that. And I think it was learning something about the history of one of the jails in central London to do with the Victorian era. And they were referencing something to do with it. And there was an explanation of something which suddenly made the penny drop for how the word was said. Anyway, so the tramp was in Warford jail to await his a trial for attempted highway robbery and assault. Yep. Peggy had cried till her cheeks were purple and swollen, and her eyes were only two aching slits. She would have been rubbing her eyes too, which wouldn't have helped that. She took her troubles hard, and just at present it seemed to her as if life could never be quite the same again. Bobby, almost equally afflicted, had the added trial of trying to conceal his grief, for he regarded tears as unmanly. That's the thing with little boys in this era, the era that we're reading about here. It was considered unmanly to show feeling like that, sadly. And the result was a peculiar shortness and roughness of manner, with frequent rushings away to the barn when his feelings overcame him. Sorry, dry throat. Joe, whose sympathy could not have been more genuine if Peggy had lost a parent, dear Joe, hovered about all day, trying to console the bereaved pair with small success, till towards evening a sudden flash of genius inspired him to suggest a funeral. Perhaps his village experience teaching him that the bustle and preparation necessary for such a ceremony was the best safety valve to work off sorrow, because you are contributing something towards the memory of the person or the animal that you've lost. You're not just sitting around wringing your hands and weeping. You are actually doing something that's helpful towards them and their memory. So there you go. If you don't want to do that current puzzle, that's okay. Let me know. I've got one other that I can put up instead. Good on Joe for actually thinking of that. We might bury him among the ruins. Oh, okay. I will actually just tell the people over on Twitter that the worst of it's past. No. Yeah. Sorry, I'll read it to you in a moment. I just can't do both at the same time. But that really, really sad bit is finished, so we now just have the saddish bit. Those who wanted to miss the worst can return to my stream now. And I'm just tweeting that so people can actually, if they have been avoiding it while we were reading that bit, can come back. Very considerate of you to warn people about that section, says past shelf date. Well, I happen to know that some people, this is not a negative about what you said, it's more me trying to put the words out there. I know that some people find that sort of part of a story a little bit traumatic. And so rather than have that being too difficult for them, I just want them to know that, yeah, that bit's been done. They can come back when they're ready. Right. I don't think anyone did go actually, but just I said I was going to, so I've done it. Right. I'll get back to where I was. I'd ended up turning the page without realising it. Here we go. So that's a great idea that Joe has just given them, is that they could have a funeral for for Rollo the dog. Sorry. Itchy. No, I was not playing with the cat right beforehand. I took pictures without playing with him. It's just every now and then I get extra itchy. And as I said at the beginning, being ADHD, I get distracted very, very easily. So if I don't scratch the itch, it will get worse and I won't actually be able to keep my train of thought. Hence me being a little bit fidgety and itching when other people probably wouldn't have. We'll carry on. We might bury him among the ruins, Miss Peggy. There's a fine place round by the old abbot's house where the ground is soft and we could dig easily. And I've a cousin in the slate quarries at Bethogwen. I think that's how you'd say it, Bethogwen, Bethogwen, that has promised many a time to cut me a little tombstone as a present if ever I was a wanting one, so I'll ask him to bring it next time he comes and put Rollo's name on it. And the next day, and the day, seeing as how he was died defending you. I will read that again. I'm missing words and mixing them up, so the actual sense of it's not working quite properly. I've a cousin in the slate quarries at Bethagwan, as has promised many a time to cut me a little tombstone as a present, if ever I was wanting one. So I'll ask him to bring it next time he comes, and put Rollo's name on it, and the day, and as how he died defending you, and we'll fix it up nice and plant flowers round, just as if it was the churchyard. So that's a nice idea. The dog's name, the day that he died, and also the fact that he had been heroic. It wasn't just a dying of old age or illness or something like that. Peggy sat up and wiped her eyes with the corner of her damp pocket handkerchief. He ought to be in the real churchyard, she said chokily. If ever a dog deserved the Victoria Cross and a military funeral, it's Rollo. Do you think he'll go to heaven? Asked Bobby, her little brother, with a suspicious gulp. Of course he will. I wonder you can ask such a question. Heaven won't be heaven unless we found Rollo there. We'll wrap his body in the Union Jack and pick all our best flowers to strew round him, and you might fire off your old pistol over his grave, if father will let you have any gunpowder. A parting salute, you know, like they do for officers, said Peggy, cheering up a little at the thought of arranging the obsequies. That's quite cool. Just a wee bit of information for those who are from the States. In the States, you don't let your flag touch the ground in any way because it's considered a sign of disrespect. And I recognise that that is the way it is for you. In places like New Zealand, places of more directly British connection, that is, who haven't separated them away from it because of the history that the States and America and England have with each other. The flag doesn't have quite the same sort of significance, and therefore we don't see it. We see it as being valuable and important, but it doesn't have a sacredness that Americans seem to have in their attitude to the flag. So there's a memorial stone over in the reserve next to us where the donkeys live. I was going to show you donkey photos. If I've got enough time, I'll show you some at the end. Not brand new photos, but ones that I have of the donkeys anyway. So there's a memorial stone for my grandmother and my grandfather because they gave that land to become a public park, which we call the reserve, because a rural park is often called a reserve. It's reserved land for public use. And it's a great big huge stone that has come from a quarry. It's not been dressed to make it fancy. And it is the size of a coffee table. A big coffee table, but a bit taller. And then it's got a stainless steel piece that has been set into it, which has etched on it their names and what the connection is with the reserve, with the park. And when it was being unveiled, and because of the time of year that it was and everything else like that, and because the land was gifted to the people of New Zealand, not just to the local council, because it was for the people of New Zealand. One of the ideas was that we would cover the stone with this huge rock with a New Zealand flag. So it was hiding the memorial plate that was on it, that piece of stainless steel with the etching on it, as well as the detail of the rock itself. And then we would remove the flag as an unveiling. So in New Zealand, that's not an unusual thing to do. I have an American friend who was, when they saw the photos of the what happened, the public unveiling, was confused and then offended because the rock, being a piece of the ground, was inappropriate for the flag to be sitting on it. Admittedly, her family has a very strong military background, which has a lot more respect for the American flag, but the New Zealand flag doesn't have the same connection with sacredness for us here in New Zealand, and also in England. So, you know how at a military funeral there will be a flag draped over a coffin in the States. Well, yeah, that can happen in New Zealand too. But in the old days, if there was no coffin being used and you wanted to use something as a shroud and a flag was connected with the person in some way for importance to them and what they represented, a body could be wrapped in a flag and then buried. And that, to somebody like this friend, would be considered very offensive, because you don't make contact between the ground and a flag. So it just shows up the differences in cultural ways of doing things and cultural ways of seeing things. So please don't be offended by the fact that Peggy is suggesting wrapping the dog in a flag to bury him. It is not intended. It is highly respectful for her in that context to be suggesting that. So that's what that was the reference to, which is why I needed to interrupt it, because I just remember this friend was so incredibly offended that we let our flag touch this rock that was set into the ground. And it took quite a bit of explaining, and both of us were offended by each other at one point there, just because of completely not understanding each other's point of view until we'd sort of had a little bit of time to think it over and what it represents for us. So there you go. We can all learn. Just at sunset, the melancholy procession started off from the stable toward the ruins. Joe and Bobby were bearers and carried between them the packing case lid, draped with all the available flags that could be found, which bore what had once been poor Rollo. Peggy followed as chief mourner, her arms full of wreaths and flowers, and a piece of black crepe, purloined from the scrap bag, pinned conspicuously upon her hat. Now, crepe was used as a sign of mourning, especially in the Victorian era. I'm just going to type in here for a definition, because I'm not sure if it will actually be something that it explains in the definition. Crepe, that's the edible one, a flat round pancake like a pastry. I thought that is also how we spell it for the fabric. Let's wait and see if it gives us an alternate. Come on. I made the wait time on, to crease in such a way that it makes it look like crepe paper. So we these days spell crepe the fabric like this. And I'm wondering if there's no alternate meaning here, if I have to put this other spelling that they've used in the book. Yes, we do. The reason why I'm doing this is because crepe was used as a sign of mourning. If you didn't have lots of money, if you were not one of the upper middle class and the upper class people who were in mourning in Victorian England, they would have had new clothes made in black for mourning, and they possibly would have also used crepe as a fabric. I'm just trying to make sure I spell it well, correctly, and hopefully crepe, mourning garments, especially an armband or a hatband. In actual fact, it's because of the fabric that it's made out of, and the fabric that it's made out of has a texture similar to crepe paper. That's why in some contexts it is spelt the same way. Okay? I was having a hard time getting all those words out because the thoughts were spinning around. Anyway, so people, when they went into deep mourning after someone died, if you were well enough off to afford it, you paid for all new clothes to wear for a year, was deep mourning, and then another year after was mourning, and then there was partial mourning. So you go from black everything to dark grey and dark purple, or a greyish sort of a purple, not a light purple. And then you go to lighter grey, like a dove grey, through the different stages. And if it was a young woman who was not yet married and was of the right age for getting married soon, it was kind of accepted that she wouldn't stay in deep mourning, that's the full black, as long. She maybe would stay in deep mourning for 6 months, not a year, so that it wouldn't impinge on the possibility of her getting engaged and married. It wouldn't stand in the way. But if you were not rich enough to do that with your clothes, to pay for all new, completely new clothes, all in black, that you wouldn't use for anything else except for showing that you were mourning, then what you did was you wore crepe. And it would be a streamer of fabric around your hat if you're a man with like a tall hat, or even a round one, with the tails hanging off the back. If you see a traditional funeral cortege, which is where you've got a carriage with the coffin in it, and there's plumes on the corner of the carriage, and you've got horses which have feather plumes on, and they're black feathers usually. And if you have people in traditional dress, they are wearing a mourning suit. Sometimes it will be a black mourning suit, not a grey one, with a tail coat, the long tails at the back, and they'll be wearing gloves, medium to dark grey gloves, and they'll be wearing a top hat which has a ribbon around it, a black ribbon, and often it will have the tails of the ribbon will hang down the back. And you actually see people who still do that as part of a funeral. If you look them up, you will actually see that sort of thing. That fabric is crepe originally. And then if you were not a hat wearer of that sort, you might, but you were a working class person, you might wear a band of crepe around your upper arm, a black band around your arm, to show the sign of respect for the fact that somebody has died. And you would wear that for quite some time, but it would mean that you could still go to work, you could still wear your working clothes, or go out in your normal clothes to church and things like that, whatever it is you do when you're not in your working clothes. If you didn't have enough money for changing those, then you were still able to show mourning. So that's wearing crepe, and that's what she's doing, as she's put some on her hat, which is probably a bonnet of some sort, just to make it look a little bit more appropriate as a mourning garment. A piece of black crepe, purloined from the scrap bag, pinned conspicuously upon her hat. The place chosen for the burial, for the interment, not internment, that's being held captive in something, but interment, which is the burying of. The place chosen was among the most perfect part. I'm just checking my words because they're jumbling around. The place chosen was among the most perfect part of the old abbey, not so much filled up with stones and rubbish as the great refectory or the remains of the choir, different parts of the ruins. Excuse me. The refectory is the dining space in an old abbey. And the choir was a particular part of the church, the main focus of the church for a monastery, because that's where the monks would all sit or stand during services and prayer times for the different hours that they observed. Finding where I am. The place chosen was amongst the most perfect part of the old abbey, not so much filled up with stones and rubbish as the great refectory or the remains of the choir where everything had fallen down. Tradition pointed it out as the abbot's house, and that name had clung to it through all the hundreds of years since the busy monks had lived and worked there. "Suppose you dig just here, Joe," cried Peggy, selecting a spot where a blackthorn was bursting forth into a sheet of white blossom, and the primroses were the yellowest and the best. Joe moistened the palms of his hands in the orthodox fashion, ready to work, and seizing the spade, began to shovel away at the loose, light soil. So it hasn't had a lot of walking across it to compact it. He had dug about 3 feet deep. He's a farm worker, remember. He can dig fairly well. 3 feet's fairly deep, actually, for what they're doing. He had dug about 3 feet deep when his spade struck against a smooth, flat stone, which, instead of coming out easily amongst the rubbish, seemed to extend for some way underneath the surface. How unusual. I wonder what this is. This is where we get to the bit that I said in my Instagram post and my original Twitter post, that it's more hopeful. And yes, I will be posting the rest of the photos on my Twitter because it only posts the first one Thank you very much, Instagram and Twitter, for not talking to each other. It looks like a paving stone for all the world, he said, sweeping the soil away from it with his hand. I'll dig out the earth all round it and see what it do be. So he's dug down, he's hit the stone, so he's kind of digging sideways a bit to find the edges of it, and he's not found the edges yet, and so he thinks it might be a paving stone. So he's going to dig the rest of it out around it to get to the edges of the stone, because it's not the sort of thing that you have under the ground normally. It took Joe a considerable time to clear the stone, though Bobby went to his aid with a trowel, but he got it free at last. And Peggy stooped down curiously to examine it. There are marks on it, like letters and queer figures, but they're all filled up with soil, she said. It seems to me it's a kind of lid, and if you dig round the edge a little more, Joe, we might lift it up. It's rather like the cover of one of those old stone coffins in the churchyard. Oh, only smaller. I wonder if there's anything inside. Oh, interesting. I'm going to change the picture here. Sorry, just since nobody's doing it at the moment. That one. Because I know you're not doing this one at the moment. I'm sorry, because the next one is more appropriate for the next part of the story than this. And it's not a lot of pages left, so I'm not going to make it extra big. I'll leave it at 110, and I'll give you the link. It's quite pretty, actually, this next one. And hopefully if you're doing the actual puzzle itself, you'll get to see it much bigger than what it shows up on stream. And there you go, the jigsaw is ready to do once I have got rid of the extra stuff that's floating. There you go, the jigsaw is ready to do. In fact, I'm just going to give you the link for it. Right. It's rather like the cover of one of those old stone coffins over in the churchyard, only smaller. Yeah, that's what those scratched marks might be, carved writing in the top of the stone. I wonder if there's anything inside it. Joe set to work again with a will, clearing out the earth well from under the side of the stone, and then putting his fingers beneath it, he gave a mighty jerk with his strong arms, and up it came, nearly upsetting him with the force of the recoil. Yeah, once it gets moving, the momentum... Sorry, just something distracting me. Yeah. Right, carrying on. So disrupted today, and that's without us doing all those extra rabbit trails that I've been doing on the last few times we've been reading. Right. Nearly upsetting him with the force of the recoil. 3 eager faces peered anxiously down into what certainly looked like the inside of a small stone coffin. But instead of containing mouldering bones, it held a good-sized chest of oak, bound with iron, rather rusted, the iron would have been, and crumbling, but still holding together quite firmly. "Lift it out, Joe," cried Peggy in such excitement that Rollo was almost forgotten for the moment. "Whatever can be inside it?" "It bain't no lightweight, Miss Peggy, whatever it be," groaned Joe, for it was as much as he could manage to heave the heavy chest from its resting place onto the grass above. "There may be money and all sorts of treasures in it," suggested Bobby. Ever hopeful, ever hopeful. "Perhaps the smugglers left it behind." "Yeah, well, kind of, that's a reasonable guess." "Nay, this be older nor smugglers," said Joe, with a glance at the solid workmanship and the quaint carving on the old lid, unless they made use of an old thing for their own purposes. Let be, Master Bobby, I can't do nothing with you hanging over me like this. I do hope they remembered to bury Rollo. He had been fumbling with the ancient rusty lock while he spoke, and it now broke away from the rotten woodwork. He flung back the heavy lid and revealed neither gold nor jewels. Nothing but a pile of musty-looking old parchments and books. Boring. The children looked at each other in blank disappointment. There might be something underneath, said Peggy, beginning to rummage in the chest to the very bottom, but her hopes were soon dashed, for a further search did not bring anything more to light. How disgusting! Who cares for old books? Exclaimed Bobby, whose heart had been set on stolen jewels, smuggled valuables, or daggers and firearms at the least. They're very funny ones, at any rate, said Peggy, picking up one of the despised tomes. Just look at the backs. They're so thick and heavy. They seem to be made of metal of some kind, with little bits of coloured glass stuck into them. Oh. But they're terribly tarnished and dirty. I can't read the writing inside at all, and there are the queerest little pictures all round the edges of the pages. I'm getting excited. I know she's not getting excited. She's just puzzled by them. But I'm getting excited because I can imagine what they are. Sorry. I'm just hoping I can find a suitable picture to put up for you. So that you can actually see something of what she's looking at when we get to that part of the story. I'm trying to find one that's going to show you better what it is I'm looking at. I want one that shows the actual book a bit more, not just the cover. Come on, people. Google, you can do better than this. Come on. Sorry, it's just I have seen so many pictures of these things in the past that to me it's like, yes, let's have a look. Oh, that might be helpful. Look up medieval treasure binding probably on something like Wikipedia. See if I can find one that's going to give me the sort of look I'm after. Let's go for this one. Save image as. Yes, come on, hurry up. Has anyone else seen the movie The Secret of Kells? No, I haven't. Do tell. Please don't forget to Burma shave it. But do tell. I'm very interested. Tell me all about it. While I'm doing this bit, you can tell us about The Secret of Kells. I'm just finding the right place to save this, and then I can show you the picture. Save. I have not, says Rich Gay Aunt. I am intrigued. That might be something I'm going to have to watch. Let's find a way to do this picture. Come on, find the right one here. There it is. It's a book, but you can't actually quite see it the way you would normally see a book in this one. Sorry. As in with the book open. It's the cover that you're looking at in this picture. there are marauding Vikings and monks hide the Book of Kells. Ah, yes. I wondered if it was going to be something like that. So this is treasure binding. She's just described something like this. It talked about it being tarnished, which if they used copper or if they used silver, they would be specifically tarnished. If it was gold, it would just be dirt on the surface because gold doesn't tarnish the same way. But it talked about stones on the cover and things like that and all sorts of work on it. There's also a white cat with human eyes who's a bit of a spirit animal. This sounds intriguing. Has it been out long? Is it an old one or a new one? And all that sort of information. Is it serious? Is it drama? Is it fantasy? Is it comedy fantasy? I'm interested. I'm going to have to look this one up when I've finished. So there you go. This is treasure binding. And it is the cover of a medieval book is made up out of sheets of metal with gemstones in these sort of surrounding clasps and all sorts of things like that. They would sometimes have a carved ivory panel would be set into them, all sorts of different things. So that's what that is. Anyway, we'll carry on. I'm intrigued. I'm going to have to look that one up. So, I'll read her comments about it again because now it makes more sense to you, which is why I was going, oh, even though Peggy's going, and thinking that they're rather strange. Wrong way. That way. Oh, done. The movie is called The Secret of Kells. Why are you saying oh done? That's what you already said the movie was called. It's not a problem. I'm guessing it's not currently available somewhere. Some of us have other means. Don't panic. Right. You didn't hear me say that here. Okay. Right. There might be... they're very funny ones at any rate, said Peggy about these books. Picking up one of the despised tomes. Just look at the backs, the covers. They're so thick and heavy. They seem to be made of metal of some kind. I'm going to show you something for size, not from 2009 Irish, French, Belgian animated animated fantasy. That would be a really intriguing one. I'm just going to grab something and show you. This is not, I'm talking before I get there so you know I'm coming. This is not, sorry. This is not a gospel or a medieval book or anything like that. This is an old photo album that was found in the boxes at my parents' place, and none of us know where it's from. We haven't yet managed to recognise anybody in it. But the size of it is kind of like what Peggy is talking about for some of them. So this, look how big that is. The idea with the styling on these things is they were often done kind of like a replica medieval book. Something important, had extra work done on the cover. So this is done with leather. It's got gold work around the edge where they press gold into the surface, as well as having the ink. But it's also embossed. So this frame part here stands up higher than this part around the outer edge here. And then you can feel the texture of the gold in it. This bit here is set down in the middle. And then it's got these really thick pages and stuff like this. But this sort of size and style is kind of what a lot of the medieval books, especially books of hours and Bibles and things like that, how they were done. And so this is what I'm imagining, except with the metal cover, as why they're talking about it being this huge book. They seem to be made of metal. They're so thick and heavy. They seem to be made of metal of some kind with little bits of coloured glass stuck into them. But they're terribly tarnished and dirty. I can't read the writing inside at all, probably because of the style of writing that they used to do. And there are the queerest little pictures all around the edges of the pages. So, yeah, we'll go back over here and find another book, which is going to give me An illustrated manuscript. Come on, please, 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 please. Google. Save this one. And this is significant for the story, what she's talking at, what she's describing. Oh, cool. And so past shelf date is saying, I think the Secret of Kills is streaming free of charge on Canopy, and Canopy is spelt Kanopy. It's one of the streaming services that's online, because online is where you do streaming. Okay. Words. Not doing well with them today, really. Did I save that? No, I don't do that. Don't do that. Come back. Sorry. Save image as. Oh, I did. This is the problem with my words today. They are really not good. So this is an illuminated manuscript. This is a page from one. And this is what she's talking about. She couldn't read the writing. And it has pictures around the edge. And they are so varied. The way the illumination is done, the detailing. So it looks like familiar words, but not. It's quite hard to read. You need to have, your brain needs to be trained to the shapes of the letters and what they represent. And hopefully it's in a language that you actually understand and can read when it's something like that, because sometimes they weren't. So there were all sorts of languages, probably Latin. Most church stuff was written in Latin, but there are a whole lot of other things as well. Excuse me. Right, carrying on. We're nearly there, nearly at the end of the chapter, the saddest chapter in the book. Sorry. Anyway. I can't read the writing inside at all, and there are the queerest little pictures all round the edges of the pages. So strange, Peggy, so strange. What be I to do with the box? Asked Joe, gazing at their find in some perplexity. He would not have treasured old books in any way. And be I to dig another hole for the burial, miss, or not? Her thoughts recalled to the melancholy occasion. Peggy flung down the book and her grief broke forth anew. Understandably. We'll bury him in the old stone coffin, she declared. We'll line it with leaves and primroses and then lay him in and just drop on the lid again. I'm glad he should have a real coffin after all, and the abbey's almost as good as the churchyard, for father says a lot of the old monks must have been buried here, if we could only find their graves. Yeah, because it's been used as a farm for a long time since then, and you've had buildings that have fallen over. You've probably also had dirt moved around, and it's covered up the graveyard, the churchyard where the graves were, all sorts of things like that. And quite possibly the stone was removed and used in other things from the grave markers. Even Ophelia could not have chosen a more flowery resting place, for the children covered poor Rollo with violets, primroses, and white sloe blossom. Sloe, S-L-O-E. It's a bush shrub, can be a small tree that grows in certain parts of England, and it has flowers, obviously. It has sloe berries, and sloe berries are used for making sloe gin. It adds a flavour to it that you otherwise wouldn't have. Sloe blossom. Joe carefully replaced the lid and shovelled on the soil again, heaping it up and smoothing it with the flat of his spade, in imitation of the village sexton. The sexton is the chap who does the burials at the churchyard and also looks after the churchyard grounds. That's just part of his job. And so Joe will have seen him doing this. Father had refused to allow gunpowder, so the pistol was useless, but Peggy placed a wreath of white jonquils, picked from her own garden, upon the grave, and dropped so many tears over it that I do not think any dog could have been more truly mourned and regretted. "You won't forget about the tombstone, will you, Joe?" she said, finding the prospect of a monument to her pet decidedly consoling. "I mean to make up a nice epitaph for him, in poetry if I can manage it, something about his being such a beauty, and then dying doing his duty, because that would rhyme." "True. Miss Peggy," declared Joe solemnly, "you shall have that there little tombstone, if I has to go without one myself. You write the words out plain on a piece of paper, and I'll walk over to Bethagwin the very next time I gets a holiday. You'll see my cousin will do it beautiful, having worked a year in a stonemason's yard, and being fond of a dog too. He might even try his hand at a weeping angel or a broken flower at the top, but I can't promise that." So stone workers, ones who worked in quarries, would cut stone from the quarry. A stone mason is someone who dresses the stone, gets it smooth and even, cuts it ready for being used for building things, but also does the ornamental lettering used on stone, used for headstones, for grave markers. There you go. "I can't promise that, not knowing whether he's kept his tools from the great when he was working for the stonemason, because you need specialised tools for that. And you get money if you sell your tools. You get more money for tools than just bits of stone if you are no longer doing the job." The box containing the old manuscript was carried into the loft by Joe and examined by Father at his leisure. The loft, that's in the barn, isn't it? "I don't know much about this sort of thing, Peggy," he said, "but I should imagine they would be mostly old records and deeds of the Abbey. It is marvellous how well they are preserved, but the oak and the stone combined must have kept out the air, and parchment does not decay like paper. Parchment is made of a certain type of pre-leather treatment of animal skin, and so it is a lot more robust. Valuable? Not from a money point of view, I'm afraid, but no doubt they would prove very interesting to some antiquarian who could read them. We'll keep them here until the rector comes home again. I expect he will be delighted to look over them some day, and will tell us what they are all about." Mr. Vaughan had intended to write an account of the find to the local newspaper, but in the hurry and worry of his affairs he forgot. The rector was still away, and as nobody else took any interest in such matters, the mysterious old chest stayed neglected among the corn sacks. That's sacks that they use for storing wheat in, taking them to the mill and stuff. Only Peggy sometimes stole up the stone staircase, and taking one of the strange books from its hiding place, would pore over the quaint pictures which bordered the pages. They fascinated her with their crude drawing, and colours still vivid and bright, saints with halos round their heads, kneeling wrapped in prayer, with folded hands in the midst of green fields and flowers, while the Virgin, clothed in blue and gold, appeared with a whole company of angels from the skies above, patient martyrs with wan faces upturned to heaven, while their persecutors flung stones or heaped on the burning brands. The blessed passing into the joys of paradise, with the wicked writhing in the tormenting flames below, and round all a curious, illuminated bordering, where strange faces peered out of twisting foliage, and figures of birds and animals were intertwined with flowers, with patterns of flowers, or the tail of a capital letter. With patient fingers, she wondered, what patient fingers, she wondered, had toiled over these in days gone by, working with paint pots and palette of gold to put the glory of paradise on his pages. Had the world altered much in all these years, and how little did the old artist think that his work would be found and marvelled at when he and his order were alike forgotten, and the very abbey where he had lived and laboured had long since crumbled away. So the old chest remained in the loft, as hidden there as it had been, buried in the earth. And Peggy came and went, never dreaming in the time that followed that these ancient, musty relics could in any way be bound up with the fate and fortunes of the Vaughans. There you go. Oh, intriguing. Very intriguing. Oh, and that's the end of that chapter. The saddest chapter of them all. Oh, that's been a hard one. The next chapter, just as a teaser, I won't go on and read it today, just as a teaser. The next chapter, chapter 22, is called Deepening Trouble. There you go. Oh, we're working our way through this book indeed. And what are we going to read when this book is finished? We have Deepening Trouble, and then we have 2 more chapters after that, the last one of which is called Conclusion. I will not tell you what the one in between is called. Oh, goodness me. So we're very close to the end of the book. It's probably going to take 3 more days, a whole week from, because of how long the chapters are. But we need to start thinking about what book we read next. Oh, do we go and read a book by another one of the authors that we've read before? Or do we read a book that is by somebody else that we haven't had before? Because she's a new author for me. I haven't read her books before. I had vaguely heard of her before, but I have to say I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed with how she's done, how well she describes things. And if you keep in mind that the children she was writing for hadn't had these sort of books made readily available for them, she's done incredibly well, I think. Anyway, that's it for today. A sad story, but also a hopeful story, as I said in my comment when I was telling everybody that we were going to be having our next reading. And I'm going to have to go now. So see you all next time. Happy reading. Bye.